Blood on the leaves and blood at the roots.
Hey everybody, this is your VibeMistress Stephanie Renée, welcoming you to the next episode of Blood at the Roots. This is episode 2, and hopefully you've had a chance to check out the debut where I began our conversation about DNA testing and genealogical research with a preview of what I learned from testing with 23andMe. Now, before we begin the episode, I need to say that I am not endorsed by 23andMe or Ancestry. So the reason why I'm beginning with 23andMe is because what I feel their strength is that they focus on the science. The science of DNA testing, and they give you a different kind of approach to the data than Ancestry does. Now, Ancestry is very important, and we'll talk more about that in a future episode. But today, we're going to continue our focus on 23andMe, the information that it provides, and the quality of the information it provides, so that you can up your learning curve about what to expect once you test, and then how to use the results once you get them back. Okay, so on the debut episode, I showed you the broad information about my ancestry composition and how that on 23andMe, once you get those results back, how much African, how much European, how much Asian, et cetera, you are. Then what 23andMe does is take that one step further. So rather than just general percentages and numbers, they can show you down to the DNA about exactly where those ethnicities manifest themselves in your chromosomal makeup. All right, down to the cellular level, which I find fascinating. If you are not a science geek, then your eyes might glaze over as I go through some of this, but I want to show you how important it is to know that and then how you can apply it, okay? So I'm going to share my screen with you. All right, so here we go. So that won't drive you crazy. All right, so here, what you see is the chromosomal painting that 23andMe generated based on the results as they were available in June of last year. So June 1st, last year, I took this screenshot, which shows how they share my information. So the reds and purples are all African. The blues, various shades of blue, are European. The oranges and yellows are indigenous, Asian, and what have you, which may be a little racist, but just we're going to let them go just for the purpose of you understanding what you're looking at. And so for this part of it, what I find really interesting, right, is that because I know exactly what my DNA looks like, then being able, move this out of the way, then being able to look at my various X chromosomes, I know for sure that the one that is mostly blue is the one I get from my maternal side, and the one that is all purple and red is the one that I get from my paternal side. That's because I know what I know about my family. But I also know that this is part of what helps 23andMe determine your maternal haplogroup, which we'll look at a little more closely today as well. But on the various other chromosomes, all this stuff is spread out in various ways. I have some really black chromosomes. But, you know, that is what it is. I'm majority African, thank you. And so that is how this looks. But this was in June. Now, I want you to see how this picture changed a little bit, several months later, right? So now we're going to, was this February 17th of this year. Now, the reason why that is particularly significant is because over here you will see that even though my X has changed, the rest of the chromosomes flipped in terms of how they were presented. So I'm going to go back so you see how the colors dance, right? This is June of last year. This is February of this year. Now, the reason why that's important, and I'm going to stop sharing just so I can talk to you critically about this. All right. So the reason why that's important is because I may have assumed, because I can so clearly identify which one of those X's is my maternal, that all of the chromosomes that appeared on the bottom half of the pairings were from my maternal side, right? That was my assumption until I saw how the picture changed in February. With all of the other chromosomes flipping, but my X is staying the same, what I understand is that the way that 23andMe presents that does not guarantee that you will be able to identify which side anybody is on from just the way that the chromosomes are paired, or that even how the ethnicities break down from your maternal side or paternal side. You can't tell that just from the way they paint the chromosomes. Please hear me when I say this, because what I'm telling you when I say that so deliberately is that you have got to do the work to figure out where people place on your family on your own. You cannot depend on the science and some pretty colors on a screen to give you that information automatically. Okay? Okay. So we're going to take that, and now we're going to move forward, and I'm going to show you about how you begin to look at your family tree and the way that they represent people to you via your DNA results and why. Okay, so we're going back to sharing the screen again, and this time we're going to go to a specific tab. So we are going to go to our cluster chart. Now this is going to sound really, well, no, actually we're going to go to the generational chart. Okay, so here we go. Now on this chart, what you see is that up from you, over here, the little white box on the left, then all of the generations that come before you are represented by increasingly bigger green boxes, because we go from parent to grandparent, great-grands, and so forth. And then we look across. So this is the stuff that most of us do not get right on any level. We just go first cousin, second cousin, third cousin based on generation. That's not how this works. The generation is important so that you understand where the first set of first cousins came from. First cousins are determined by if you share both sets of grandparents. Okay, and so those people are your first cousins, and then on across in your same generation is where the ordinal number goes up: first, second, third, fourth, fifth, right? But if, for instance, and I have this a lot, if they are my father's first cousins, right? So on my paternal side, my father had a good number of first cousins. They are not my second cousins. They are my first cousin once removed. Got it? Their children are my second cousins, so on and so forth. So my father's, if I say my grandfather's first cousin, my grandfather's first cousin is my third cousin. Yes, that's how that works. So on and on and on. So that's where we get the first cousin, once removed, twice removed, and all these things. I don't expect you to memorize this. I don't expect you to understand how this works. But those removes are all determined by where that person stands in relation to your generation. Okay, I'm looking directly at you. To your generation, not to you specifically. Okay? Okay? You with me? We're not going to spend too much time on that. I just want you to know, come back. Okay. I just want you to know how all of these words are used. And so here on 23andMe, they don't make any assumptions about level removed or any of that. They will not automatically populate your list with any information about generation removed and what have you. They automatically assume when they put this terminology on your list that everybody is on your generation, which of course is not the case. You'll see people who test who are from your grandparents' generation, but they won't assume anything about how that wavers. It's just everybody is either a whole cousin. So they're either close enough to be a first cousin, second cousin, third cousin, distant cousin is how that generally works. I think they go up to fourth, but they assume everybody's on your generation. All right. The last piece of this that I want to show you before I start giving you specifics about my chart that will hopefully help you apply them to yours is the way that this breaks down for generations when you share DNA with someone. Okay, so this, as you will see, comes from a chart that was generated by what was called the shared CM. CM, the way it's written, stands for centimorgan, not centimeter. Centimeter is little c, little m. Little c, big M is centimorgan, and it's not really a unit of measurement, but it's the easiest way that people can describe to you about units of DNA, right? Our brains work better when we think about distance. So centimorgans, the unit that they use for measuring DNA. And so you will see here that in cluster 1 are your siblings, and this is full siblings. You have the same mom and dad. Then out of the people that they tested, they say that full siblings shared an average of 2,629 centimorgans between them. People who were in the 95th percentile shared a little less or a little more, and same thing for the 99th percentile. So to encompass the biggest amount of people who were in the test segments, they did this. And so they say that the expected number for full siblings to share is around 2,550. Cluster 2, which we find a lot, right? Because a lot of us have half siblings, full aunt, uncle, niece, or nephew, and grandparent to grandchild. The average that they shared in centimorgans was about 1,760. So you can expect that for a half sibling, for an aunt or uncle, full aunt or uncle, or for a grandparent to grandchild, that they would share about 1,700 centimorgans with you. All right. And then it keeps going down, 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 down. So it's important to know this information, or at least access this information when you are looking at 23andMe, because 23andMe gives you those numbers. They give you percentages, but in order for you to start assuming or begin to build a tree based on that information, you got to know, relatively what that person's relationship might be to you, especially, and again, I'm looking closely in the camera, especially if it's a name that you have never seen before. Some people that you have never met who might be close relatives to you, and you're trying to figure out who they could possibly come from. Where do they fall on your tree? Rather than letting your heart and what you think you know about who you are and who they might be cloud your judgment, the science can help you get to the truth. And I'm asking you, if you're going to take the step to begin this process and do the DNA testing, then instead of questioning the science, like we have a lot of people doing about masking up and vaxxing, instead of questioning the science, question what you know and give yourself the grace to accept that what you think you know may not be your truth. Okay, we can dig into that more when we're building family trees, but the science is the science. And when you get the results back, stick with the science to see where these people may fit into your life, where they might fit onto your family tree. Okay, so now with that, we're going back to share the screen again, and I'm going to deal specifically with my DNA relatives list, so that you can see how this manifests itself for me. Now, I'll remind people that I invested in 23andMe Plus which gives me advanced health results, but it also expands the list of relatives that I have access to. People who have DNA tested, who are in 23andMe's database. And normally, if you just do the regular testing with them, Ancestry only or Health and Ancestry, they will cap your relatives at 2,500. Well, I made the investment plus. And now, as you can see, I am related to, on some great or small level, to almost 5,500 people in 23andMe's database, which was just astounding to me. But where I'm going to reside is in the higher matches, so you can understand what it means and how you can begin to parse through this information. Now, right now, I have the default of 23andMe is to sort by strength of relationship. And again, unless you have told it otherwise, they are making assumptions about what those degrees of separation are between you and other people. You could change it to, what I often do is changing it to percent related, because the higher the percentage is of how much DNA you share with somebody, the easier it is, again, to start kind of spitballing where they fit on your tree if you don't know them, if you don't have any relationship with them. Okay. And so one of the bonuses of me DNA testing is that I found a half uncle, which is my Uncle Paul. So I'm going to go onto his page to show you specifically of how this known relationship that I have, you can deal with this information in 23andMe. Okay, so what you can do here is you can edit the relationship to someone. So I forget what they assumed my relationship was with him. I think they said first cousin. I went in and I manually changed it to half uncle, because I know that that is true for he and I. And so there are lots of choices that you can have. I'm not going to change it. I just wanted to show you that you can manually change what that relationship is. So that's always what you see when you bring that person up on your list. What does that look like on our DNA? Specifically for me and Uncle Paul, that means that I share DNA with him on every single one of my chromosomes. But fantastically to me, we didn't get the same X from my grandmother, his mother. So I share information, I share X chromosome with a bunch of other maternal relatives, but not with him, because women have two X's. And I'd never contemplated until this, and until I asked questions in the 23andMe forum, that one woman could give two different X's to two different children, which is clearly what she did with my mom and my Uncle Paul. Very, very interesting stuff. But that is what we have. Now, I filled in some more of this information, that general ancestry composition information that you get, that a lot of people, that's why they're doing the DNA testing. How much of this and that am I? So they do it comparatively for you directly on that person's profile page here on 23andMe. And you can see that our percentages are very much in line with one another. I chuckle because I really do think that I got most of my Asian from my paternal side. So again, that checks out. It's a Caribbean thing. And as you see, even though we don't share actual X chromosomes, we still have the same X chromosome profile, our maternal haplogroup. I won't get into that with you all, because it's just, we're talking about 500 years ago or more, but that is what that information gives you. What this does happen to tell you, though, is, as you can see here, it says, it is possible that you are recently related through a direct line of female ancestry, but it's also possible that you match because you share older roots in the same part of the world. So it's not a guarantee that we'd have the same maternal haplogroup. In our case, it indicates that we come through the same, maternal line. And so now where that becomes really important, because I know Uncle Paul, I know where he comes from, and I know how that ties him to me, looking at relatives in common. How this helps is because knowing that he is a maternal relative means that all the relatives we have in common are on the maternal side. And of course, because I need it, it's taking a moment. So I'm going to stop sharing for us. Oh, there we go. Of course, the minute I say that. So everybody that you see here, and I won't page through them, I'll just show you the first page, but everybody you see here, I know is related to me on my maternal side. And most important in this, though, is that what 23andMe gives you that Ancestry does not. And again, we'll talk more about Ancestry in detail on a future episode, but it not only shows you what your relationship is that either you have determined or they're guesstimating based on how much DNA you share with that person, but they're also guesstimating where the relationship is between that person and you, that other person and these same people that you have in common. Did that make sense? Okay, I was talking fast. Let me do that again slowly. And I'll come back out for a second and talk directly to you. Okay, so what 23andMe gives you that Ancestry does not from first glance is that when you see you have relatives in common, 23andMe not only shows you the estimated relationship that you have with the people that you have in common, but they show you what the other person whose profile you are on has, the estimated relationship that they have with that same person. And you generally expect that unless this person is your sibling, they're not going to have that same degree of separation from the relative you have in common that you do. So knowing where they place and where you place is very helpful in trying to put that person on your tree to verify that degree of separation that you have with them down to the specifics. Okay, so I'm going to go back and we're going to share that same tab again so we can look at those people that Uncle Paul and I have in common. All right, so this is my Anderson line, and of course my Anderson line goes up to a whole lot of other surnames, but this is my Anderson line. So I have some very strong relationships with people that I know come through the Andersons and the cousins. It so happens that people that are from Nelson County, Virginia, and the surrounding area, we're all related in one way or another. It's a very small rural community in the mountains of Virginia, of the western part of Virginia. And so there is a connection through generations, of course, with people marrying people in the area that makes almost all of us cousins in one way or another. But just this first level of relatives in common, the way 23andMe does this is they are ranked, if you want to call it that. They are ranked in the amount of DNA that they share with you. All right. And then it compares it to the amount of DNA that they share with the person whose profile page you are on. Okay. So my cousin Annette, who I share about 11.29% of DNA with, is a first cousin to my Uncle Paul. And so they share a little bit more. Now, there's some other reasons for that in this particular instance that are complex, and I will talk about in a completely different venue. But you can go down the line and you can see the same thing applies. Now, the amount of Anderson DNA I have compared to my Uncle Paul explains that even though some people are a more distant generational relationship to me, they share more DNA with me than they do with my Uncle Paul. There are a lot of reasons for that. And so I'm going to again talk to you directly. So what I want you to think about and to begin to understand is that after you DNA test, now DNA is fickle, right? Not even full blood siblings, excuse me, not even full blood siblings get the exact same amount of DNA from the exact same parent. So even identical twins. So there are little variations here and there. That means that their ethnicity balance, what DNA they have on which chromosome, even though identical twins are split from the same egg, they might get a little bit more from their dad, and it works differently. It is not an exact science in that way. But what is exact is that the DNA that you have in your cells tells a particular story. The DNA itself and your relationship to people with whom you share DNA is something that you got to wade through. The family tree, as you know it, can point you in a direction. It cannot give you all of the answers. And the reason why I say lean to the science is because God bless our elders, our ancestors. Some of them lied. Some of them lied by omission. And they had lives. They had real human lives that led to relationships and children and all kinds of other things. It all happened before us. And so all we can do is take the information that our DNA provides and make decisions about how to manage it and deal with it from here, right? We can't change what happened in the past. For some of us, that story about how we got the DNA we got is way more complicated than we may have ever dreamed. And it may give us information that completely disproves what we thought we knew. And, and this is a moment for me to pause for all of you out there who are adopted, who are trying to find your birth families. That's why knowing the science can help you a lot. Because once you see who you're related to, how much DNA you share with them and other people share with them, it can help you start narrowing down the information that will get you to your truth about your birth family that the documents and other traditional resources probably don't provide for any number of reasons. And so I'm an advocate for DNA testing because what's going on in your cells tells a particular story that can tell you who your people are, if you really choose to know. Some of you out there may be DNA testing just to find the ancestry composition, and that's cool. But please don't be offended if people who want more specific information about where their bloodlines lead them and to whom, if they come to you asking for some answers. Because some of us are looking for a different kind of experience. And so I hope that we will find some balance by understanding what we're looking at and digging through it more concretely. Hopefully, we will all get the answers that we want and need. Okay? That's about all my time in this episode. So we will come back in a future episode and we'll talk more about the other tools that are out there for understanding the DNA results, comparing DNA results across systems, and then, of course, going on to Ancestry, where not only can you get DNA testing, but you can also build the family tree that will be critical for those of you who are trying to understand where those bloodlines, who specifically those DNA results are tying you to. Okay, so thank you for watching this. And I forgot to do this last time. I'm not going to forget this time. I want to let you know, if you need to learn more, and I see that, gradually my thing just dipped down significantly, but if you need to learn more, if you want to offer some feedback about what I have shared with you today, then you see the email address. Send me an email to VibeMistress@soul-sanctuary.net. Ask questions, leave comments, and I will definitely read them and consider them for future episodes of this, because I want this process to be as informative for you as it possibly can be. All right. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again on another episode of Blood at the Roots.